Hey, Jeannie Lynch coming to you today. Really excited to share my chapter in the story in the book of Cage No More. 16 authors came together a year ago from Sanctuary Publishing, and we all shared our story. And I will tell you, you think you're done your healing until you go to tell your story in written form. So everybody has a story. I'm sure you do too. It was so healing to share it. So that's what you're about to listen to. I did a little audio version, got some pictures and some slides to boot. And I hope you join me. My dog is waking up, so I'll go tend to my dog. I hope you enjoy this. Labor of love, straight from my heart to yours, and I hope it helps you heal. We're going to take a little journey through the 8 phases of the moon. Wondering what the moon has in common with my story? Stay listening, stay watching. It's coming up next. I'll be reading straight from my chapter 6, but also ad-libbing a little bit, just so I can share some of the emotions tied behind these words. If you'd like to purchase Cage No More, you can absolutely find the Amazon link in the description. And please do. Amazing authors were part of this book. So many beautiful stories to share. Let's get right to it. Enjoy. The moon represents powerful feminine energy. It signifies wisdom, intuition, birth, death, and spiritual connection. The moon can also indicate a time for uncertainty and illusion, a time to trust your intuition so you can see beyond what is in front of you. When nothing is as it seems, the 8 phases of the moon are seen as symbols to guide you on your way to your own personal growth and development. Phase 1, the new moon, the new beginning. My story of transition begins with the decision to conceive my daughter, Isla Ann. 3 months after my wedding day in 1995, my then husband and I knew we wanted to start a family as soon as we got married. On this particular night in August, we got ready for bed with one clear intention: to conceive a child. We stayed up that night sharing intimate details of our past and our hopes and our dreams for our future together. We both noticed the magnificent moon shining through the bedroom window, and we promised to never forget it. On this night, I felt empowered to stop being the victim of the shame, the hurt, the guilt, the abandonment, and the unworthiness I had experienced in my past. I was excited to be a co-creator with someone who felt the same way. I remembered feeling as if this was a dream come true and the perfect opportunity to close Pandora's box for good. Or so I thought. Isla Ann was born 40 weeks later on our wedding anniversary. 9 months later, I found myself in another transition as my marriage fell apart. The divorce cost more than the wedding, and it took longer than the duration of our marriage. It became clear that Isla chose us both to be her parents, but for completely different reasons. In 1998, I became a single mom with sole custody and shared visitation. Phase 2, the waxing crescent, setting intentions. 8 years later, on January 20th, I received a call from Isla's stepmom, Stephanie, while driving to work. She informed me that Isla and her grandmother had been in a car accident and that I needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. I quickly turned the car around and headed straight there. I could feel the fear arise within me as I tried to take control of my thoughts. There was intense tug of war between dismay and hope taking place in my mind. I phoned my sister Karen and shared the news that I had just received and asked her to meet me at the hospital for moral support. When I arrived at the hospital at the same time, we entered the emergency room together. We were both greeted at the door by a social worker. She instructed us to follow her to a small room so we could talk in private. The social worker explained, "Jean, your daughter was in a car accident on the way to her school this morning with her grandmother. Isla's grandmother was pronounced dead at the scene. The EMTs reported that your daughter was non-responsive when they arrived, but they were able to get her heart beating again on the way to the hospital. Your daughter has unfortunately suffered blunt trauma to her head, and I'm afraid we need to prepare you for the possibility of your daughter living. In a few minutes, we will be taking you to see her." At that moment, the tug of war ended abruptly. I kept hearing the social worker's statement on repeat in my head as we began to walk down the hallway to my daughter's room. "We need to prepare you for the possibility of your daughter living." When I entered the room, the first thing I noticed that it did not look as though she had been in a bad accident. There was only a small bruise over her left eye, and I remember feeling grateful for that. I leaned over to kiss her cheek when the hospital machines started to make loud noises. The room quickly filled with the emergency room staff, and I was asked politely to stand back. I turned to my sister in complete horror and began repeating the same question to her. "What are they doing? Why are they doing this? Tell them to stop. Tell them to stop. What are they doing?" Karen placed both her hands on my shoulders as if she could shake me back into my body. "Jean, they're trying to save your daughter," she answered. I replied, "You don't get it. She's already gone. She's not there, and Mother knows." In that moment, instead of leaning into the situation that was in front of me, I backed out of the room and walked away. I will never fully be able to comprehend why that was my choice. I only knew standing there hopelessly watching was too much to bear. I got halfway down the hall and I felt a tremendous, increasingly weight push from the top of my shoulders as I felt my legs slip out from underneath me. And everything went dark. I woke to the sound of my daughter's voice speaking to me. "Mommy, wake up. It's me. It's time to spin this into gold," I heard. When I was able to pull myself together enough, I turned to my sister and asked her to find someone in the hospital to talk to about organ donation. Later that day, the doctors pronounced my daughter clinically dead. Her father and I agreed to take her off life support, give her organs to those who needed them. This was, and will always be, the worst day of my life. I remember leaving the hospital that day, disappointed that I was still breathing. Isla was laid to rest the following week under another full moon. At her service, her father and I shared how Isla would ask us to tell her the moon story. I love that we both shared the same version of the moon story and found great solace in the fact that Isla knew the full moon would always be a symbol of our love for her. Phase 3, the first quarter moon, taking action. The first few months after Isla's passing was a blur. I will never forget the many acts of kindness and support we received from Isla's school and the local community, my employer, my close friends, and family. Going through this grieving process has taught me that some of the experiences seem to be so mundane and insignificant at the time, while others stay ingrained in your mind forever. This is especially true when you go through a traumatic experience. I've learned that every moment with my daughter mattered. Isla's passing has taught me to appreciate all of life's experiences as a gift, whether they're good or bad. I'm going to share with you one of these notable moments and the 3 lessons that these experiences taught me. Coincidentally, they both took place 2 weeks before my daughter's passing. 2 weeks before Isla's passing, I went to my normal therapy session where I shared a particular worry with my counselor. I had a strong sense that the time with my daughter was about to be cut short. I gave him a few other examples of when these kinds of thoughts would later play out and come true. I joked with him that I must have a crystal ball and explained that many people had told me that this was some kind of a gift, but I knew differently. I believed the knowing was a curse. He tried to comfort me with these thoughts and these worries and told me they were completely normal. He suggested meditation or yoga to help me ease my mind. He also suggested that I pick up a few books on developing my intuition. 2 weeks after Isla's passing, I went back to the same counselor. We talked for over an hour that first day about the day Isla died. They were, in fact, the first steps in processing my grief, and today I acknowledge that they were the most important. I remember asking, "Now what?" at the end of our session. His answer to me, "Jean, there will come a day when you realize that you're here to help others heal. It's time to embrace these gifts instead of being afraid of them. I would like to suggest today that this is our last session. I would like to make a referral to a colleague of mine. I believe she can help you develop these gifts." At the time, his answer made no sense to me. I was confused as to what these gifts were he was even talking about. The referral to another counselor would end up being the next step on my healing journey. These experiences taught me these 3 lessons. Number 1, that everything in your life is happening for you rather than happening to you. And number 2, that every experience, especially those involving other people, is significant. And number 3, that the best part in your life is when you embrace the magic, the synchronicities, and all these mind-blowing coincidences. Phase 4, the waxing gibbons. Refine and home. I started working with my new counselor immediately, and at this point I was showing signs of post-traumatic stress syndrome and having involuntary out-of-body experiences. It was a blessing that my new counselor was also an energy healer, and many of our therapy sessions ended with me receiving an energy healing. 6 months after my daughter's passing, I was immersed in all things mystic. I was laser focused on developing my own intuition, and I was learning to trust the divine guidance and trying to follow the path of least resistance. That path included meditation, the chakra system, yoga, Buddhism, mindfulness, the law of attraction, intuitive readings, mediumship, Reiki, healings, past life exploration, and a deep dive into this idea of an afterlife. Finding the following spiritual paths has been one of the most rewarding adventures of my life. I've learned that the entire new way of life will emerge once you're open to receiving divine guidance. I'd like to share one of those experiences that took place. It is the story of my daughter's moon, called Isla's moon. This story is for everyone who has lost someone and wants to believe that love lives on. My neighbor invited me to a party that some of the parents from Isla's class would be attending. This would be my first attempt at a social gathering. When I entered this party, I noticed one of the mothers of my daughter's closest friends. I headed straight towards her and wrapped my arms around her in a heartfelt mother-to-mother hug. She told me that she felt it was a coincidence in seeing me, that just before she left for this party, her daughter had written a poem and absolutely insisted that she hear it before leaving. She heard the poem and immediately thought of my daughter. She promised that she would email me the poem the next day. As promised, the next day I received the following poem on email. If you are up at 9:30, when the moon is up in the starlit sky, you will know why the moon is there, to shine a bright, glittery trail, to a place where happiness is all there is, no wars, no guns, no need to fight. That's the place I'll be tonight. Poem by Alyssa Tenney, age 8. I broke down in tears with joy as I read this poem. I felt it was an absolute direct message from my daughter. I immediately responded to her email with a sincere thank you. I shared the significance of the poem with her in that email. The next full moon would be just a few weeks away, so I grabbed my calendar and I marked it. I created an alert on my phone called Isla's Moon and went back to work that day with such a feeling of contentment and connection to my daughter. Phase 5, the full moon, fruition and completion. A few weeks later, I heard my alert go off as I was driving home on the interstate that night from work. I began my intense search for Isla's moon. When I took my last turn, I found the most magnificent moon I've ever seen. It had a shimmering halo around the circumference, and it seemed larger than I'd ever noticed. I quickly pulled over to the side of the road, too overwhelmed to drive. I felt my daughter's energy enter the room. I cried tears of joy. I knew she was right there with me, so I began to speak out loud to her. Yes, sweetie, I see. I know. I understand. I appreciate your message. I love you too, little I. Thank you so much. When our time together felt complete, I pulled back onto the road and checked the time. It was 9:30. It was just as the poem had said it would be. It was also to the day and to the minute that Isla was conceived. Phase 6, the waning Gibbons. Introspection. The full moon experience changed my understanding how spirits could communicate with us. I knew I wanted to learn more and how I wanted to do this for other people I was coaching. A few weeks later, a close friend of mine invited me to a 4-day conference called Life After Life. It was at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. Many of the presenters were authors from books that I had already been reading, like Brian Weiss, Sonia Chiquette, Raymond R. Moody, John Howland, just to name a few. On our last day of the conference, John Howland, a world-renowned medium, hosted an event that would allow the attendees an opportunity to connect with their loved ones. My daughter was the first spirit through. The message I received would change my life forever. Isla's message through John Howland. I have a message from a little girl who would like to make a connection to her mommy. She is showing me and telling me she wants her mommy to know that she is the line leader. I am seeing she is very young, and her job in spirit is to line up other mothers that you will work with. They are like you. They are grieving. She is telling me that you will help them heal. Her name is I, or Lila, or Eli. Does this mean anything to anyone? She is also telling me that the man sitting next to you is not her daddy, that you and her daddy are no longer together. Does this mean anything to anyone who is standing over here? He pointed in my direction. Sitting in the crowd of other grieving mothers, I raised my hand and replied nervously, I think that's me. His message went on to tell me so many important details about the day she passed, what it was like for her to transition, and how she got there. He told me she knew I was grieving, and he asked if I was ready to let go of the pain. Isla wanted me to know that she loved her daddy and me, and suggested that we come together in our love for her, not in our grief. He explained that our work together was not over, that it had only just begun. Phase 7, the last quarter, forgiveness. I came back from that conference so clear-eyed and excited for my life and my daughter and my relationship in this new way. I was finally able to embrace my intuition and wanted to teach others to do the same. I began doing spiritual readings to help other mothers connect with their love of their loved ones. I did not want Isla's passing to define my life, but I was willing to let it be the gift I had to offer. Phase 8, the waning crescent moon, surrender. Early in my spiritual journey, I believed that our life was merely God's goal and that every experience was predetermined for our life lessons. I thought life was about all the lessons, and how we handled these teachable moments would depend on whether we got to repeat the lesson or not. My current understanding is considerably broader than that. I now believe that life is a true desire to feel these experiences while we're in a physical body. Everyone collectively benefits from all these shared experiences because we all are all eternal and one. These experiences are the sensations of good and bad, joy and sadness, love and loss, relationships, betrayal, rest and hard work, the blessing of a birth, and the sweet transition back home. Today, I live in Florida with the love of my life, our canine search and rescue dogs, Molly and Rosie. Isla continues to be the line leader for the clients I serve. I'm happy to share that rather than grief, I feel a strong connection to my daughter in spirit. My heart is full of love and appreciation, and for every experience that comes my way. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. With love and appreciation, Jeannie. Thank you so much for the gift of your time. All the links are in the show notes. Namaste.